All right, hey everybody, this is Complacent Badger, and I'm back with Sierra Kilo.
Hello, hello.
And we're just going to do a quick, well, not quick, it's probably going to be the entire game. We're going to talk about what happened in his game and see what he could have done better, and obviously what exactly his plan could have done better as well. We're going to try to make it as non-specific to the teams as possible, but of course sometimes it's going to get very specific.
That's what you're gonna have when you play. When you run commentary on a specific game, though, huh?
Yeah. So how do you, first of all, while we're watching the setup, how did you feel about this game before and after you were done?
Well, I knew it was going to be a pretty nose-to-nose match, which is unfortunately what kind of brought me down. I thought that the teams were going to be evenly matched. I was expecting to go maybe one score a piece in the first half, and then whatever happens in the second half happens. But it clearly turned out a little bit different than that.
Yeah. This was a game that I was expecting a lot of blood to happen, but with all Blood Bowl games, though the block factor and what you'd consider combat and being offensive is important, you only win by carrying the ball. And I think this was a perfect example of brawn kind of going before brain on both sides of the pitch. No,
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, you saw in on the kickoff that I left my brain.
yeah, and for the kickoff, I think that was one of those situations where obviously that wasn't the best thing to do in the middle of a league game to test something in the system. But I think it wasn't so detrimental, especially because Chris didn't take advantage of the situation, and also that might have also led or been led into by a little bit of underestimating the opponent, doing something so unnecessarily risky, even though it wasn't terribly risky, despite it being a league match.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's definitely and I still say I need to play a game and see if it says that you need three players on the line.
It doesn't actually say that you need on the game, like when it's doing the perfect defense, it doesn't say that you need to keep it. But there's never a situation where you can have less than three on the line when the drive is starting. Even on a
Yeah.
blitz, it won't let you take them off.
It makes perfect sense when you go back when you realize what had happened. I was like, well, that was clearly what was going to happen. I don't know how I didn't see that, but that lineup was had it worked, it would have been brilliant. And then because it didn't, I mean, I like you said, it didn't really hurt me. I was able to play off and move well and compensate for it. But I would have liked to have had more initial blocks because he definitely was able to out position me in the beginning there.
Yeah, and I will say I did misspeak. There is one kickoff event that does allow you to not have guys on the line, and that's a quick snap. It allows every player to move one step.
Right, and that was what I confused it with. And it does say that you have to line them up in a legal defense.
Okay, so there you go. It does say legal defense. All right.
Right, and that's what I missed when I just pulled those guys off the line. Was hoping for the best, but
Yeah, and so we're watching that actually happen right now, so we're a little ahead of the video. So I'm going to talk about a little bit the... Okay, in this game, my mentality going into it, and this goes for any, what I call a human-esque team, Amazons, Nords, humans, anything that has a pretty basic stat line of 633, and then whatever their armor value, be it 7 or 8. You should be playing like an agility and a bashing team at the same time. You need to pick your opponents. If you can outnumber somebody and get your assist on them, you should, if it's advantageous, bash on them. If you can't, you need to get away from them. That 3+ dodge is still pretty decent, especially if it doesn't allow their strength 4 character to hit you.
right, and that's a really good point, and that's something that I didn't take advantage of in this match in particular. But that's you look at the two games that I played previously in the league were against teams that I could just nose to nose with and dominate, and I didn't adjust my play like I ought to have. So this was a clear case of me really not doing my homework, and we talked about that where other players didn't do their homework for the week, and that's one of the things is I normally play a couple games during the week that are just for fun or just against teams that are similar to kind of pick up the style and get a feel for. Oh yeah, of course, off the field, no big deal, right?
Yeah, it happens. A KO is not terrible. Your armor value 7. That's expected.
Right. But yeah, because this week went kind of long, and it was actually more than it was almost more than 7 days between the two.
Yeah, because we were actually ahead of schedule, so it ended up taking. I let it to where it was the same date that it would have canceled out and forced draws, so it ended up being about 10 or 11 days.
Yep. So I think that was something on my side of it, and exactly as planned. Just did an overall stellar job of using their team.
Yeah, I think there was definitely mistakes on both ends, but I think for your skill level, I think the mistakes that you made were a little bit more influential in what happened. You have he has a very resilient team that's able to deal with mistakes. Like that one right there would probably be considered what I would consider his first mistake. His defense in using the apothecary on the KO was that he didn't want to be a player down. But
it was, yeah, we actually talked about that during the game, and he says, yeah, I didn't want to be a player down. I'm like, but you're already a player up.
Yeah, and a KO, like we talked about your last player, is not that big of a deal.
No.
I think if he wouldn't have wasted it as apothecary, I believe he has a badly hurt later on that he could have rectified. I don't know if it would have made a big difference, but this early, that was one turn. Anything could have happened. He could have had a player die, and he used it on a KO. It worked out for him. He has armor value 9 for 9 and 8, so that's fine. But that probably wasn't the best choice to do.
Right. And this was interesting where you can kind of start seeing where I have to kind of rectify my defense and do something now that from a bad starting position and do what I can. So that's I like to think that was a pretty good use of closing off that side, using the assist to get the dies that I needed, and kind of see how the rest of that positioning goes. What would you have done differently? What do you think?
Well, and that's a big thing. And let's say that I had made this mistake just, doing as the same thing. So if I had this exact setup with this exact team going on, what I always do is I try to get my assist from the farthest back away that, basically maximize people's movements. That lineman that you have back there, number 6 on the left, I probably would have had him give the assist because that maximizes the movement that he's allowed to. And I would have used the closer one to try to get presence on the ball. You don't want the opponent to just get a basic free pickup. I mean, I know you still have to roll, but getting that negative modifier on it could make him make mistakes. And that's what you're trying to force. If you can get over there, even if it's a 3+ dodge roll, if you wait until you get better position with all your players, maximize your easy rolls or your movements that don't take no rolls, it's a relatively low risk chance to just put one body on that ball. And what that does is that forces him either to take a really dangerous roll. I mean, a 4+ isn't terrible, but you can expect a good odds, 50% chance that he's going to have to use a reroll. Or he has to burn his blitz on getting your presence off the ball. That means that your guys that are approaching from the backfield, they just maximize their movement, and now they're not getting blitz to be stopped. You can get more presence on that ball.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Where you said that that 2+, or it would have been a 3+ dodger, and I ended up doing essentially what we talked about was putting a man on the ball with a 2+,
which works perfectly fine.
Yeah, so it's, same mentality, different way of doing it, but you're absolutely right where, because I was caught flat-footed by that, so I was definitely not thinking as clearly as I could have, but I ended up, I think, ending up this turn in a fairly decent defensive position.
And I will say that with the extra dodge roll that you could have potentially had a presence of 2 on the ball, which would have been a very emergency situation for him. It's on his side of the pitch. Presence on the ball. He has no presence on the ball. that would make a very tough situation for him. Obviously, you can see that his rolls weren't too great in the beginning, but he did make up for it with his rerolls. The other thing I want to mention is that you have a lot of lineups right here. Over on your right side, you put alignment up against this Chaos Warrior. With the assists that are happening from him, those two guys on there weren't actually adding to anything. You're just feeding the troll.
Right.
So that Chaos Warrior is getting free hits on you. Luckily, nothing happened from it, but that Chaos Warrior is a lot more devastating if he's getting free blocks. With an armor value 17, you have to be very careful about giving free blocks. You always...
No, and you're absolutely right. And that's definitely one of those things that once his turn started, I was like, oh, that is a kind of a Chaos Warrior over there, not a Thrall or something like the last games I had with Vampires, where I should have played more of a Halo defense on that side instead of putting men on men.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake that I made throughout this game, I think, was I played it like I had the strength advantage instead of being an equal strength team.
Yeah, and a lot of the style that Chaos players have, the style of game, and the Dwarves players especially, they get a huge pile of guys, what I call like a huddle of guys, and that's because for Chaos, as the example, they have a lot of strength 4 guys. Bad pickup, but then it rolled right in his hands. That strength 4 really excels when you have a huge huddle, because no longer getting assist, that strength 4 guy can tackle anybody with an extra die, because nobody's getting an assist, and he just gets to throw the block. He doesn't have to use a blitz. He doesn't have to with this armor value 17. And I can't stress this enough, against a team that can hit almost as hard, or harder than you. You need to stay away and maybe only give him the blitz. Every once in a while, only allow him the blitz. If you can double team a guy, knock him down on the ground, the Norse are a team that do not like rebuttal hits. You hit hard, but you break like glass. So do your best to set up situations where if you can't do another block and you have nothing else important to do, it might be better just to dodge away.
Yeah. And this was having to open that up, like, really frustrating for me because I didn't have any. There wasn't an opportunity to do a 2-die block, so I had to manufacture that by really rolling the dice, is the phrase is, to get a 2-die block, and then had to burn a reroll on it anyways. So
yeah,
that was kind of part of how that went is, and how Blood Bowl is, where you gotta start the waterfall somewhere.
Yeah, and I think I might have taken a little bit, if that mistake that I did make, like we said in the very beginning, I think I might have taken a little less of an aggressive stance. You kind of brought the fight to him, and you're caught on the back foot at the beginning.
Right.
So I might have just done a standard agility move that I like to do, and just move everybody one space away from the opponent, which he doesn't get many blocks if you do that.
Right. And I think that's definitely, like you said, I was caught flat-footed, so I went to my kind of default position where I am a little more aggressive in general and have less faith in dodge rolls than I should, and that's something I'm going to start working on.
Well, and that's one of those things to think about. If you're looking at the odds for dice, with your team with a block, you generally do have a better chance at doing a block attempt. Even on a single die with block, if the opponent doesn't have anything crazy, you're looking at only 1 out of 6 chance of actually failing the roll, while a standard dodge for you is a 3+, and that's a 33% chance of failure. So you're basically doubling the chance of failure. But you also have to look at the side of what to gain against a team like this.
Well, I agree.
If you knock them down and you happen to get the injury, that's a huge thing, and it may be worth it to do it in certain situations. But if you think about the rebuttal that's going to happen to you, it could be worse. And that dodge roll you saw right there, that was an injury. What I probably would have done...
That was foolish. There was absolutely no need for that.
Well, and I would have taken the same thing, but what I would have done
foolish, but the roll was just unfortunate.
Well, and honestly, you could have made that roll a little bit better. Your roll for that one was actually, you would have made it if you would have dodged back to the right. You dodged into a tackle zone, which reduced your bonus that you got.
Yep, that's true.
So if you would have gone back to the right, you would have probably had to, I'd have to look at it again to see how far the movement was, but it looked like you'd also have to make another 2+ to get in the position you wanted. But sometimes that's worth it. What's better, a 3+ and a 2+, or a straight 4+?
Right.
And that's just things you have to look at, and especially if you haven't used a reroll for the turn. I'm more likely to take multiple easy rolls than one hard roll if I still have a reroll remaining.
Yes.
Especially if you do the dodge roll, wait to see what the outcome is, and if you still have the reroll, continue finishing that character's movement and do the going for it. You don't have to commit to the going for it and the dodge roll simultaneously. Or any dodge rolls, in fact.
Well, that's a really good point, is using that as a strategy and kind of stutter step through and making sure that you're not going to be at a disadvantage on the dice, to use those rerolls to the best possible end, as it turns out.
Exactly. If you get the chance, like let's say you have 3 dodge rolls to make, it's a long shot, but you still have the reroll. But you need it for something very important. You move the first dodge. If it works without using the reroll, you do the next one. And then you determine based on what you want to do from there. And that's just a standard technique that anybody can use to just be a better Blood Bowl player and be more cognizant of what's happening and make the dice work for you instead of being worked by the dice.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
And you see Chris here actually set up fairly nicely. He opened up the hole, pushed your guys on either side, and starts running in. And this is what I was talking about, of playing a little bit more conservative. If you would have kept at least one safety, he wouldn't have been able to have this beastman so deep almost by himself. If you have one safety, and I tend to try to leave one safety all the time because it's just easier. I mean, not that he's a passing team, but especially against throwing teams, that safety can save you.
Yeah, and that's a generally a technique that I use, but I have my runner all up in that business. I actually used him to try to get that Dauntless to work for me on that Chaos Warrior, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Ended up throwing 2 both downs.
And you can see exactly the exact same situation. He just watched you fail a dodge roll going into a tackle zone, and then did the same thing when he didn't have to.
Right, and I think that's one of those mistakes that a lot of people make, and it's, though I have a pretty good understanding of the gross mechanics, it's that point where I need to start paying more attention to the finer points, like into or out of tackle zones, and picking up those modifiers, or not getting a positive modifier instead of avoiding negative modifiers.
Yeah, and I may do a video later on. It might be helpful, but for anybody that's listening that really doesn't understand what we're talking about when we're talking about modifiers, a dodge roll is an agility roll. You take your agility stat. As you can see for this lineman we're looking at right now, he's an agility 3. You take the number 7 and you subtract that number. So a agility 3 character would have a 4+ to make on a 6-sided die. That's a 50-50 chance. When you're doing a standard dodge roll into an open cell that's not adjacent to an enemy model, you get a standard +1 to your die roll, which makes it a 3+ roll required. What we're talking about when he's dodging into a tackle zone, it's any of the 8 adjacent spaces, which are orthogonally or diagonally adjacent to the enemy model. For every one of those models that he is adjacent to, he receives a negative modifier. So if he does it, as we've seen the last 2 times, against one model, it takes away the bonus that he's getting, because it's 1 negative, 1 positive.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're talking about. Those can start stacking up, and if people aren't aware of that or they're not watching, it can get very dangerous. Here's a situation where that blitz that you did right there, you pushed him to the right, and I wasn't sure why.
Because I knew that werewolf was there, and I was going to be able to put the werewolf on him from that position.
Okay. With him being strength 4, I guess it's still a good position because you also have that other lineman there to get those negative modifiers in. For me, I would have tried to push it back towards the group. try to get at least one space closer if you just push him back. Because the werewolf, I think, could have at least lined up against the warrior.
Yes, that would have been true.
And that's just one of those things. It's a one space difference. Ooh, good hit. But it's a one space difference, and I don't know if it would have made any difference. But it's just one of those things you got to think about. What's the best position so that everybody can assist me? And another thing is you're throwing a lot of blocks here, and like we keep talking about, you're throwing a lot of blocks. You got to try to get at least one guy to get back and play safety if you need to. You need it in case he makes that crazy dodge roll. You need to have somebody that's ready for that. Because if he dodges right now, he could dodge back right and receive no negative modifiers, and then just circumvent your werewolf.
Right.
And this lineman would have been a perfect candidate, in which I think you actually move him down here now that I'm watching it. You didn't play him as safety, but you did put him on the person, and that is, that's a good play. I really like that. But once again, it doesn't change his dodge back right.
You're absolutely right, and that was one of those things where I threw a bunch of blocks up there in order to free him. So it was that waterfall effect as well, where I needed to get 3 tackles in order to get that guy free.
And I can see that you're kind of thinking on that like a Blood Bowl level 2, where you're not just looking at the situation going, okay, I marked the guy. You're going, okay, I marked the guy, but if he does this, it could fail, so I'm going to put more guy. If the guy tackles this guy, he needs more people. So you're putting bodies on the situation to kind of be a second and third plan.
Right.
But you need to get to that point where you're starting to crunch the numbers, where you're like, okay, where can he go that is the best odds for him to get away? And see that back right dodge and go, okay, that's a 3+ right there. That's not a hard thing to do.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's not something that I considered there. I'm trying to remember, because this was a couple days ago, I'm trying to remember kind of my mindset there was, I think because I had a lineman all the way to the left there free, so I kind of had him as almost a safety, and if he dodged out of there, then I would have had the lineman free, and the werewolf would have been, one of those two would have been free as well. I think that's how I thought about that.
Yeah. And another thing, playing against Chaos, they're all agility 3, so they're equal to your agility. Ooh, another knockout. And that's that. Once again, we're coming back to that armor value 7, man. Playing against those Chaos Warriors, they seem to be the ones that are doing it to you too.
Right.
The Chaos Warriors are still agility 3. He can create a cage almost anywhere. He can dodge away pretty successfully, just as successfully as you can. If he runs that Beastman off to the right and creates a cage over there, you're almost shit out of luck.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest mistake that he made.
Was actually, and I obviously later on you guys talk about how he had no idea about blitzing. For you,
mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, for you, well, this is literally his 5th game of Blood Bowl, I think.
Yeah, he did mention that. I think he played a little bit of tabletop.
I don't, I'm not trying to down talk him or anything. I don't know if he played as much tabletop, and maybe he did. I just assume more that he saw it, but maybe he did play.
He was roughly familiar. Yeah, at least at the beginning of it, picking teams. But yeah, you're absolutely right with the Chaos Edition specifically. The games, pretty much the games that we had for the season.
Yeah.
Plus, you did a quick tutorial with them, right?
Yeah, I did do I think I did at least 1 game, if not 2, to kind of do some stuff. But he kind of gave me the idea that he knew what he was doing, so I didn't go too deep into it. Yeah. For anybody at home, for blitzing, if you don't know, a hotkey for blitzing, not only on the right side panel, you'll see over there whenever you pull up a character, you'll see those 5 buttons. Some of them are filled in, some of them aren't. Those are all different abilities that you can do. You have the leap ability, you have the pass, you have I think that next one's a handoff, hypnotic gaze, bomb. No, sorry, it's blitz and then pass. You can press the button for blitz, but also the B key. If you hit the B key, it will automatically bring the blitz lightning bolt over your player's head. And
the blitz lightning bolt, if I'm not mistaken, is actually on the far right-hand side of the screen on that vertical side panel.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
It's the fourth one down right now. It's blued out because I used it.
Yep.
But
Okay,
if
and
you
there
pay
it
attention
is.
to the next turn, that'll actually that'll go to a lightning bolt. And I think that there's a point where I used it like that because instead of throwing a regular block, you can throw the block and then keep moving with the blitz
Yep.
action.
And I didn't even know you could use that button over there. I don't know why I didn't even think of that. And I didn't even think of that until you guys mentioned it while you were playing. Because I always just use the B key if I need to do that, just because it's a little easier.
Yeah.
It's good that you got that ball. That was pretty good. His mistake, you capitalized on it.
And then I couldn't really do anything. I didn't see. I got stuck because I was like, well, I don't know what to do with it. I just need it away from the end zone.
Well, and that's one of those things. Right in that situation, that going for it was not useful.
Not beneficial at all.
You weren't going to get away from anything. It was an unnecessary roll. You re-rolled it, but that's a burn of a re-roll.
Yeah, and I changed my mind midway. I had a plan, and I don't know why I thought that, but I was actually considering putting him on that Beast Man, which but I was like, what the hell am I doing? So I immediately avoided that.
Yeah, a situation that you could have done here is, because your guys aren't set up for offense, was to create at least a insubstantial cage just to get in his way. You had the Chaos Warriors kind of held down with a couple guys over here. If you were to, basically it sounds counterintuitive, but all his players are up there. If you were to run that guy back around and try to hide, and then maybe do a couple dodge rolls to get back, you could get set up, and then maybe even set up that lineman up at the top left with that Beastman, set him up for the pass.
Right, and that's now that I'm looking at it, that was definitely what I should have done. Was I should have moved bottom left and stayed out of the way and get myself into some sort of offense.
And this was the first moment that I realized that you were not playing like I normally see you. You did a 2-die tackle with a Norse werewolf instead of just dodging away with your ball carrier.
Right.
That was a crucial move. I think this is the move that lost you the game.
Yep, I would definitely agree with that.
If you would have just moved, you could have... That Chaos Warrior was not going to catch you. He's slower than you.
Right.
You could have got out of there, and you could have at least got the ball down there. Even if he did, if you chose not to do any going for it, just got that ball down there. Even if he tackles you, you have the ball down there, and he's got all his players still on this side.
Right.
It would have...
That was definitely... That was an opportunity where I really didn't... I didn't see the opportunity that was there.
And that was huge. That was so big. And when I saw that, that's when I was like, okay, that's when the notes had it. Because I still have all these notes right here.
That's funny. Yeah, I haven't watched this.
And I know, I hate watching my...
Thing. I was so frustrated with myself. I didn't even want to go back and watch this.
And honestly, that wasn't a big thing. Like, when I first saw it, I was like, meh, all right, people make mistakes. That wasn't probably the best move to make in a league, but...
it's you know what, it wasn't very impactful, but it was such a, like, it's embarrassing. Like, you're just like, what the fuck was I thinking?
It happens.
I know, but that's you look at the things in Blood Bowl that happen because they happen, or happen because you kind of push the ticket on them. So
yeah,
that was one like that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Where I didn't see a lot of opportunity because he had the Beastmen on both sides of the field up there, and I think that it's just one of those. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen what would have happened had I done it differently.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, man. Like, if you're in this situation, and usually I'm not one to just run a guy through, like I was just talking about what he did with his Beastman earlier. Right. But in that situation, you were so tied down on so many different areas that with that ball carrier all the way up there where he already was, kind of that, what we talked about, a little bit of a bad choice, just running with it. Like, okay, I've committed to this choice. Let's get out of here.
It really, I look at it now and say that the best choice, maybe instead of running upfield, would have been to run to the far right.
Lateral, yeah.
Best man advantage.
But in that situation, if already making that choice, you run into that end zone. Because it worked out. You didn't get stomped yet. You still had the ball. You just get up there, man. You always focus on that ball. And I want to stress, don't always focus on the ball first. Sometimes it's not what needs to happen. but there are situations when you need to tell the difference between whether the ball is a good idea or not. And I see you struggling to wanting to pick that ball up right now.
Yeah.
And that dodge roll just didn't go your way. That pickup roll would have been a 4+ as well. So I would have probably once again tested that dodge to see if I still had my reroll, and if not, just use that lineman as presence on the ball.
Yep. Good note there. That's for sure.
Because
But
they were
it was
both
inspiration coming to like turn 6 and the ball on the midfield.
yeah. And that's one of those things. It's like, both 50-50 coin flips. You gotta, and see that ball pickup. That was such a bad move to start out with. At least get somebody on the ball. You know what I mean? It was a lucky bounce to where it was got 2 people in presence. But for him, especially in this situation, I know it's almost over, so the chance of a score is pretty slim. But it's there. Get people on the ball, so that is less likely, and then do the crazy stuff of picking up the ball or hitting people.
Yeah, and I definitely wasn't getting great rolls, but that one worked. Yeah, he did a pretty good job of keeping my guys down, and I never really had an opportunity to stand up and use them.
Well, if you've seen anything from my games, you know that all it takes is 2 players.
Yes.
All it takes is 2 players. Really, it takes 1, but 2 players gives you an edge if you can get inside your opponent's head and keep them out of yours. So honestly, you're not going to get any points from me for low amount of players. I mean, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 able bodies on the field right now. I can't remember last time I had a game with 8 able bodies on the pitch at turn 7.
Yep, absolutely correct.
Hell, even at the beginning of the game, you wouldn't consider having 8 able bodies. There's like maybe some willing bodies.
Yeah, it's true.
But both sides made a lot of critical errors, so nobody got anywhere. The ball literally didn't end up moving for the game for the first half.
Yeah, it's honestly it's on the halfway, it's on the midfield line.
And that just comes down to what the focus of the game was. There was a focus of hitting.
And this was pretty good because this is for the first time I learned from my last game and started counting squares, and I had a free guy up there and was just hoping for a windfall.
And and this was like
I had one last game, and we've had it a couple times in the league where you end up with a fluke move and the guy's like 1 space from the end zone. Yep,
and that's why and that's another thing. I always play, especially when it starts getting towards the end of the half. The opponent is, especially on defense, is always looking for that 1 player edge, that one guy to get in there and break through your cage. If you just take 1 guy away and put him, I usually put him 1 space over his movement allowance so he can do 1 going for it to get in. So if your guy's 7 spaces away, it's 13 spaces on each side of the pitch, including the end zone. So you can count that and keep him 7 spaces away, which I think you did. Maybe 6 for you. I don't want to count right now. But, you set that up early in, about maybe turn 5. Have that set up so that you have that chance. And it's really helpful. Like, let's say your line just gets decimated. And you're like, oh, crap. I've got nobody to defend my ball carrier. Chuck that ball downfield to that guy. Let's see if he catches it.
Yeah, and even if he doesn't catch it, then it's on that side of the
Exactly.
field.
You get a turn, maybe even 2, to resituate your defense. Yeah, you switch possession, but is it worse than him taking the ball on your side of the pitch?
No, you're absolutely right, and it takes the focus off of your players and puts it back on the ball.
Exactly. Ball movement scares people. Man, that ball moves more than 3 spaces in a turn, people are watching.
Yep.
And I'm the king of chucking the ball just to get some time. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And, that was one thing, even though I lost the game, I was using against Masrak. He was so afraid of me chucking that ball that he put 6 players on 1 goblin. And all I did was run it up the right side of the field. I made him think that I was going to pass every turn. I even
Right.
talked. You can hear me, there is a psychological effect of this game. I was talking. I was like, I'm going to pass that ball. I'm going to pass that ball. And he's like, he's going to pass that ball. He's going to pass that ball. And I just walked Dr. Stickman into it.
Yeah, yep, yep. Look at that. That was a good use of that blitz.
Yeah, he hit you knowing that was your last ditch. It happens.
Yep. That's tough. And that was a perfect use of it where he gets that +1 strength for horns.
Yep, and that's what Beastmen are for, man. That impromptu safety at any time, man. They're wonderful, agility 3, strength 3, movement 7, horns. They're where you need them and as strong as you need them.
Yeah. I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. I'm so frustrated. My whole world just collapsed. I don't know what's going on anymore.
And that happens. It's a very frustrating game. It's a dice game. Everything is dice. Even taking a step can sometimes be a die roll. It's a very frustrating game. But
I remember you telling stories about how you've had you play Skaven and you have a guy who just super high level runner goes for a going for it to get a touchdown and just dies.
Yeah, that was my first Lizardman team. I had a level 6 skink and did one going for it for a touchdown and killed himself. I actually stopped playing Blood Bowl for about 8 months after that.
Yeah, that'd do it.
I just never picked it back up. I was like, this game's stupid. And that came out of my ignorance, and for you and everybody starting up, if you want to get into Blood Bowl, if this looks like something fun, read the rule book. I was that guy that didn't read the rule book, and it was very frustrating. Read the rule book. The first 8 pages are the most important, especially if you're going to be playing the video game versions that Cyanide has released. You only need the first 8 pages.
You're not obligated to learn them. Look at that, a double push, and then just
that's so rough. I hate that. Just learn the first 8. Oh, but it worked out. Frenzy. Learn the first 8 pages. They teach you what is important so that you know what's going to happen. The rest of it is if you're going to play tabletop or if you just want a really deep understanding of the game. Obviously, more information is better. Know thy enemy like you know thyself. You will win 1,000 more. Sun Tzu said it best. But
we might want to get our intern to check that quote, but
yeah. And this is another thing that I actually mentioned in my notes that I didn't like, though it doesn't matter until later. You don't maximize movement. You sometimes do the box movement where because this is one of the few tabletop games that you can move diagonally.
Right.
And sometimes you do that little box movement. And the reason
that one up there was just because that's how it fell. And the weekend before we had some drinks over here, and my keyboard and mouse are covered in I think they're cosmopolitans. So I just my mouse is just going ape shit over here. So I was just glad to get that guy in the position that he had.
But that's one of those things is, what we learn is that complacency breeds this, and take it from me. I know about complacency.
Oh yeah.
And
complacency level badger.
Exactly. And just get that star player point for that pass, dog.
Get it.
No, and that's a good one. But for those movements, do your best not to ever do that because you'll get into an important situation and you'll burn movement.
Yeah, and at the same time, you kind of get a feel for exactly how far any one character can go.
Exactly.
Get an eye for tackle zones and all that.
Got that KO back. Later on in the game,
we talked about my very calculated use of spending of money.
Yeah.
I've got those Bloodweiser babes.
But for that movement thing, you need to make sure that you don't do that because later on in the game, and I'll try to catch it and point it out, you do that prior to a blitz, and it reduces your movement for after the blitz. And you could have done something. I think you actually take a going for it because you didn't have the movement to do it.
That'll be, we'll keep an eye out for that. That'll be good.
So just be very careful. And for everybody at home, always get in the habit of maximizing movement. Don't cut yourself short. You'll get in the habit, get complacent, and that'll cost you.
Yeah. And I have to unknot this train wreck.
Yeah. But you're going into the half, and you're actually receiving the kickoff.
Yes.
So this is good. This is a situation where you should be feeling confident. Like you've made some pretty and even.
No, I mean, really, that I did feel exactly like that. I boned the kickoff that he received and drew it to 0-0. The ball stayed at the half. So that was as unfortunate as that sounds. I mean, that was a successful half for me.
Yeah, and not even just drawing it. You had a couple situations where you didn't immediately recognize it, but now you recognize it. But even at the end, you had a situation with that pass that you could have potentially scored.
Yeah.
Where he didn't really have a situation where he got that close.
Yep.
And that's another thing.
It's an unfortunate kickoff.
Yeah.
In general.
And that's one thing. He's an Agility 3 team all across, just like you. I don't think he's played enough and understands the roles enough to know that he can play a passing game. It's not his first choice, but he should always have a beastman ready to down there to make that catch.
Yep. So I lined up a little off to the side to try to keep from putting two guys on beastman, and then he kicks it there, which was awful for me.
Yeah. Okay, a couple things here. You're receiving. When you're receiving, don't be so afraid of who you're lined up against. Receiving and with him putting guys on the line, you can definitely set up situations where you can beat the living shit out of him. I love receiving because it means I can tackle first. And that's one of those things, your werewolves, you're focusing on his beastmen, which it works. They're lower armor values, so you have a better chance of knocking them off the pitch. But those werewolves, if you just get them one assist, they can do some crazy stuff against those Chaos Warriors if you're afraid of them.
Yeah.
And I think right here you actually do blitz. Nope, you get here it is. You get the assist, and I think you blitz with that. So you did have that in mind. And for me, I never do a strong side defense. Never. This game with the kicking, unless you have an actual kicker, this game is too tentative about strong side defenses.
Yeah.
Obviously, yours is a strong side offense, which is kind of an odd choice because all that does is open up your side.
Right.
If you did this and this situation happened, I probably would have just set up a couple guys to kind of block on the right side, one space away. Just set them up to where he can't touch me or get to me very easily. Grab that lineman, grab the ball, and then get as far left as possible. Get behind that line.
Yeah.
You always want to be behind that line, and that's why keeping a general nice spacing through across the entire pitch is helpful. And there, right there, that you just stunned one of his beastmen because you got the reception, so you were the first to strike.
Right.
And
that was part of it, was trying to be able to get a couple die block on that Chaos Warrior. Like, the entire point of lining up on that side was I was going to use that to get to the Chaos Warrior with the blitz from the werewolf.
Yeah, and see right here, you put that lineman up against that Chaos Warrior, and that's not doing anything for you. All that's doing is giving him a free block.
Right, and that's where I should have lined up in a one-off stance, and still made sure that if he wanted to hit me, he would have had to use a blitz. And other than that, it would have been gravy for me.
Yeah. So you grab the ball, which is good. And I think you do.
I should have moved it up.
I would have moved it just one space to the left.
Left. To the right or what?
To the left. Basically not where you moved, because where you moved, if he puts a beastman just north, basically to the right of that beastman and north of that lineman, he could blitz you at strength 4 with no negative modifiers. And there was a beastman available to do that, and he didn't do it, I don't think.
Yeah, there were a couple times that he had missed opportunities that I was very grateful for.
And the reason why he can't get that assist, you see, is because the lineman and that beastman are canceling each other out. You can't assist if you have somebody next to you without a special ability.
Right.
And that would be the only
guard, right?
Yeah, and that would be the only person that would be able to give you an assist. So if he put a beastman into you right now, that would have been my first move. that Beastman all the way playing safety, I would have
Yes.
hit you with that Beastman immediately. Um, because he has a relatively nice defense right now.
Right.
You're not going to get anywhere with where you put that ball carrier. And the important part about the cage, the standard cage, is that the way it's made, where it's each of the corners on the 8 spaces around you, the opponent cannot get to you without a -3 modifier to a dodge roll. So he cannot blitz your runner immediately.
Right. And what standard cage breaking is to put one man on each of the players on one side and then come through the middle, yes?
Yeah, if you can, and he won't be able to do it. You'll never be able to break a cage, yeah. If you have nobody adjacent to the opponent and your cage is just out there and it's all 4 points, unless you do a crazy dodge roll, there's no way to actually do a strike against the runner, the guy in the center, the ball holder.
Right.
There are agility cages as well that change the game a little bit, where the purpose is more to not allow the opponent to even get adjacent to your holder, but they can be a little easier cracked. And talking about cages, don't be a player who puts like 7 or 8 players around your ball carrier.
No, that's just impeding your lines of movement.
Exactly. The cage is very important because it has routes of escape. That cage is going to get stopped. It's going to happen. And that runner or ball carrier able to kind of dip out and go pick up another cage is very important.
Which would have been a really good move.
And see, he puts the same Beastman I'm talking about in the same spot, but he doesn't see it as the attack it was.
Right.
He's too focused on the immediate blocks. He's not taking a second and thinking. And that's one of those things. You generally have 4 minutes in a turn. You have a lot of players, but a lot of those players are kind of like, well, that's pretty obvious what he's doing. So mitigate risk, choose the less risky, and maybe not necessarily the least risky thing to do. The thing that has the most reward versus risk. Knocking that ball out of his hand is that's pretty rewarding.
Right.
Especially when you have a Chaos Warrior and another Beastman so close that if that ball bounces the right way, you can just run around your guys and pick up that ball. That could have turned this game around real fast.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had to get kind of inventive over here.
And in this situation, you're totally winning on the left side. My first move would have been to get the runner out of there. Dodge away. Dodge back to the...
I never even thought going to the left side.
Because if you take that runner, dodge back right, and move left, you've got a lot of presence on the left side of the field.
No, you're right. I mean, that would have been a good opportunity.
And that would have also allowed you to potentially put a lineman downfield to get ready for the pass, bring a couple guys over from the right side over to the left side to protect a little bit, and keep him on his toes. I'm not saying that it was 100% you were totally going to win if you did that, but...
No, absolutely right.
It may have had less rolls involved, but I think right here, you do actually a good job of just cracking through this defense. Yeah, leaving only 2 guys standing, 1 adjacent to your runner, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
He could do the blitz that we talked about. I don't know if he does it here or if he did it at all, and it would hit your runner at strength 4. But I think you do dodge. And just me, because I've noted that he's not, as a player, noted that he's not attempting to take dodge rolls, I might have actually tried to run downfield with this one, which I think you do.
And immediately fail the dodge.
And here's that going for it that's unnecessary. You failed the dodge, it happens. The ball is in a relative safe place, so that's not the worst thing that could have happened.
Yeah, that was one of the funny things, because I was talking to you the other day, and I said that I think the pickups were, I think I said pickups, and I guess what it's looking at is dodge rolls killed me.
Yeah, well, the place that you decided to dodge, oh, no, that Chaos Warrior was down. Yeah, so it was a standard roll. It happens.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's...
But you had already used your re-roll for the turn, I think, and that was the big killer.
Right, because I threw a double attacker down with my werewolf.
Yeah, and you did get the shit beat out of you. I mean, one of them came from a failed dodge roll, but still, 2 knockouts and 2 injuries.
Well, this is one of those situations where I had that really key move, and then I needed that to happen before anything else could happen, and then that just left a bunch of guys standing next, with just ready to get punched.
Yeah. And I won't say that it's 100% because Blood Bowl is never 100% anything, but if your ball carrier is ever in trouble, generally, unless you have a really reliable hitter that has like block, rerolls available, all kinds of shit. Usually,
Yeah.
dodging away is usually the best option because if you're getting out of that cage, it usually means that there's 5+ players against you.
Right. But yeah, just the way that my particular situation happened was I needed to open up that lane on the right hand side the way that I had my strategy going, and that blitz with that Norse werewolf was 100% required for that.
Yeah. And I think right now, even in this situation, you're still pretty strong. A drop ball doesn't necessarily mean a terrible thing. Obviously, it slows you down a little bit, but he has left this right wide side just open.
Yeah.
And you can just totally molest his line and be able to pull him off you. If right here, if you were to just take the ball and move up right, and then just kind of step away from him and keep your guys at least one space away as much as possible,
Yeah.
you could have done some crazy stuff against him. And I think the reduction in players is really starting to hurt you now. You're looking
Yes.
at 8 players on the pitch, but 1 stunned.
One stun. Yep.
And that hurts. I get it, man. I've definitely always been there.
Yeah, but that's kind of one of those things. Is that's not a position that I'm normally in, so I'm uncomfortable with I don't have a back pocket strategy.
And here's one of those
This
things.
was, this was what I shouldn't have done. I should have used the werewolf here, and then used him as the ball runner.
Aren't they agility too? Oh, you're saying tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I get you. Another thing, I know we always like stand up your guys, stand up your guys, stand up your guys. In this situation, especially on that left lineman, I don't know if I would have just stood him up. I might have, because he wasn't very important. Him standing up wasn't adding much to it.
Right.
I might
agree.
have waited after I opened a hole, and then when he stood up, dodged away with him to add more support on your right side. You're losing the battle on your right side with men.
Yes.
So getting another body over there against his slightly slower Chaos Warrior would have been pretty beneficial. And especially with that lineman just 3 spaces to the right of him, he's losing that fight. So dodging out to the left and then taking a long route around could get you in a better situation. You always want to be kind of consolidating your forces towards the ball.
And I should have taken it straight up the right hand side.
Yeah, I think especially with that stand up there, with the lineman that's still down that hasn't done anything, you could have definitely had some nice field presence up there. The only thing you'd have to worry about is that beastman, but once
Right.
again, he's not doing a dodge roll into a blitz very often. I think he's suffering from the same kind of fears of dodge rolls that you do.
Yeah, which is weird because I'm not normally too concerned about them. But I think I failed a couple and then got gun shy.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot to people. They kind of know it's one of those like opposite things. You really don't notice the facings of the dice when you're blocking. You're kind of like, well, whatever. Those are pictures, so you don't really think about the odds.
Right.
And then you see like an actual number and on a D6, and you're like, man, that's scary. 33% chance. And for him, his blocks are exactly the same odds as most of his dodges, not counting if he's using 2 dice.
Right.
Man, he just murders.
Yeah, and this is when, as the wheels came off the wagon, as they say.
Yeah, did he? Okay, he did. No, he didn't go against your ball carrier. I was so surprised when he did this. Like, for some reason, he was just like, die, runner.
Yeah.
Which was such an odd choice. Because he had plenty of other players that were... He had 2 Beastmen and a Chaos Warrior right there. The Chaos Warrior was
Move.
Exactly. The Chaos Warrior was even adjacent to the runner and was able to throw a block.
Yeah.
He could have just thrown a block against you instead of that blitz. That blitz came out of nowhere for no reason. And that
he's so intent on blitzing with his Beastmen that's what he did.
He could have still done it just after the block with the Warrior.
Right.
If he wanted to hit that runner so bad at first, there was no reason why he couldn't have blitzed your lineman.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
It was such an odd choice. He could have turned this well around on you with that stun right there, and your werewolf being up on the field up there.
Yep.
Man, he could have turned that bad on you. This
is funny because this is turn 11. He just finished his turn 11, and he hasn't used either of his 2 rerolls.
Yep. And yeah, if he would have hit that lineman, use those Beastmen to come down and pick up the ball, because I'm not even confident he moved those Beastmen. Because they still had the symbol below them that he didn't activate them.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm looking at this and I'm trying to remember what I did or what I should have done. See, I don't think I would have used that. I should have used that blitz to move that free lineman all the way to the right-hand side and knock that Beastman off.
At this point, honestly, with so little players, I probably would have just bailed with that lineman. I would have bailed and probably tried to do a handoff to the runner since he's got no negative modifiers. Because when you're doing a handoffs, once again, for you, if you don't know, I think you do, and for everybody at home that's relatively new, the difference between a handoff and a throw is that there's no agility roll for the ball carrier. The receiver still has to make a standard agility roll, but on a handoff, it always counts as accurate, giving him the +1. So we are back to that 3+.
Right.
If you were to move that lineman, and one of my favorite things to do is actually to move the lineman up farther than the runner, like a space beyond him, so he has better field position, and give the ball to the runner behind him. For this situation, that probably wouldn't have been as advantageous because there wasn't really anybody to set the lineman up against. But if you would have just dodged back right 1, gone up 2 right, diagonal.
No, what should have happened was that free lineman should have come around from the right-hand side, excuse me, and blitzed that Beastman.
Yeah, and I can tell right here you were so afraid of those dodge rolls because you were even contemplating pass.
Yeah.
And honestly, you still had your reroll. You know, the dodge was a very good option. Right here, you still had a viable option of dodging and then doing the pass. Obviously, the pass wouldn't have been as nice because that's an extra roll that you're adding. But I don't know, same field position but an extra roll.
And look at that dodge.
And then the back dodge. This is where I was so confused. You failed it, which is so scary. But then I think you reroll and succeed.
Yeah.
Yep. You dodged 1 down, and I was like, why? Because I think you wanted to go left, and then you realized that would have been terrible.
Yeah.
And then
that's exactly what happened.
And then you're like, okay, I'll go right. And that's that maximize. And this is the exact moment that I was talking about, maximizing that movement, knowing what you're going to do ahead of time. And then here you go. You do it again where you go left instead of just going straight left. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is one of those things where I was like, fuck. Yeah.
And in this situation, I probably would have just chucked that ball. If I made all these mistakes.
But I was like, man, he's going to get murdered by those fucking Beastmen next turn. But it would have gotten the ball down. I should have thrown it there. Absolutely.
After making those, a series of mistakes, because that was a good 3 kind of just very minor mistakes that snowballed in that turn.
Yep.
And that's what happens. You don't notice them, and then you watch the replay, and that happens.
And that's why I knew I had to do it, but I just didn't. Not.
Yeah, because it was either the lineman was going to get blitzed or your runner was going to get blitzed. And what do you want? The ball to be midfield, or do you want it to be
all the way down? Yeah.
And this could have changed the game huge if that ball would have gone out of bounds on this next pickup attempt.
Yep.
It would have put the ball somewhere else. So just
Crazy.
once again, and the guy with big hand,
And worked for him, huh?
and the guy with big hand just happened to be there.
Right.
Another thing that if we were looking at it and you were looking at it, that might have pushed you more to like, okay, I'm just going to pass it downfield because that dude with big hand's right there.
Yep. Didn't even bother to think about that.
And this is pretty much where it crumbles. To avoid just having this game on here twice, we only have 10 minutes left, but I'm going to jump a little ahead. I'm up at 102, and you failed a dodge roll. I think it's white background. I can't even tell if that was a stun. But not a lot of huge things happen. You've pretty much gotten into a bad situation already, and all he's doing is protecting his assets, getting you out of the way.
Yeah, it was funny how close now that I've tried to move it forward a little bit with you, I'm trying to move the screen all over the place too. Thanks, Brain. I'm not actually playing right now.
I'm actually at 104.40 now, and this is where his Beastman is all alone, and you pull a lineman up against him.
Oh, I do that crazy-ass move?
Well, it's not quite there yet, where you just put the one lineman on him.
The one who was down, and I do the two going for it.
I don't even think you use the going for it at all.
No, I do 2 going for it to get the first lineman on his back left quarter.
I'm about to say, it's not even to that point yet. I'm at 105.10. You only have one lineman on him right now, and it's down at the bottom. And this was a situation where you put the guy on the ball carrier, so you're forcing a dodge roll. And that's, in this situation, that might be one of the best things you can do. But in case he fails, you need to start ignoring his players and start bringing your bodies down there. You need to get more guys down there. You don't have enough bodies to be messing around against his team that's outnumbering you. He's outnumbering you up there almost 2-1. And this is where you just do this redonkulous, and it works.
I know, right? Of all, this is the one fucking thing that I get, right?
Yeah.
So it's three dodge rolls.
3 dodge rolls and a going for it.
And a going for it. No big fucking deal.
And you tackled him on a 2-die tackle.
Yep.
And you have the presence at the ball. And right here, you're debating on whether or not picking it up. For me, I probably wouldn't have. But it ended up actually giving you a better situation when you did it. Because now, that's going to be really tough for that Beastman to get that ball. And just go for the touchdown. But here is where I think between the two of you, it was kind of between mistakes and just good rolls, it lost everything for you.
Yeah. I mean, it was like just battling because I didn't think that I had a shot to get that guy to stop that guy at turn 14, and he's got 2 more turns.
So here, turnabout is fair play. He fails a standard 3+ dodge. Here is your moment to shine. My first move, honestly, standing up those players would probably be what I would do just to get him up. Stop him from getting more guys.
Yeah.
In this situation, man, since you're so out of luck, man, just go for that ball.
Yeah.
That's it. Just go for the ball and get it out of there.
Trying to.
And I would wait to pick up this lineman right here. Oh man, it's such a shady situation.
It's just a fucking wreck of a field position. Just wreck everything.
And then the failed pickup is so.
Oh yeah,
rubbish.
I mean, fucking failed pickup.
But it bounces in the best place it could have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it does.
So that works for you. So now you're in a weird situation where both have only everybody here next to the ball has a single die tackle.
Yeah.
And he's up there just kind of hitting your guys for whatever reason. Instead of bringing them to help.
Right. That's why I just kept picking them up.
Yeah. And that was a good play. That's just, like I said, I'd pick him up, maybe it'll coax him into attacking, and it did. And man, this is such a scary situation because he's right there, but it's not.
It feels terrible.
And that drum roll's happening. Hate it. Hate it. All right. So he's thinking. He's really thinking right now, and you can tell he doesn't know what he should do. And in this situation, honestly, if I was him, the right beastman, hit B, blitz your lineman out of the way, either push him or put him down on the ground, pick up the ball, run it in.
Yep.
He failed.
Yeah.
All those unnecessary, all those unnecessary tackles. He could have had that touchdown so much earlier. It didn't end up mattering, but
yeah, and that's why it was one of those things where I was like, man, just you almost gave up because you're just fighting. This dirty fight.
Right here,
one die tackle that I made.
I would have never done this. In this situation, you're so okay in this situation, I would have brought that lineman in to help.
Yeah.
That lineman over there, I would have brought him to help on this left side. Get that 2-die tackle, move him into position, get another 2-die tackle, and then just hold it to a stalemate. That's it, man. And you went for that 1 die, and then you go for this one, and it's okay.
Yeah. This is just when a plan goes bad and you're just fucking fighting.
And then
shit.
here,
and I failed that pickup again. So I did. I failed 2 pickups like right at the end, which is why I was like, God damn it.
And this is, I don't remember if you moved the runner, but I'm like, don't move the runner. Don't move the runner. Don't. You have nothing to gain. Don't move him. And you moved him. Which, once again, the ball bounces in a very, very good spot for you. The only way it could have been better is if it landed between both your players.
Right.
But this is still a good spot. He can't get to that ball without at least 1 dodge roll. And he takes the most risky route to get this ball.
Yeah.
This might have been the worst route. I gotta see it again because I wrote it down. If he would have just dodged directly right, it would have been a 3+. He could have been able, and while blitzing, dodge directly right, 1 down, tackle your runner out of the way, grab the ball, run it in.
But that was like all the way to fucking turn 16. I mean, just crazy. It was insanity.
And he burns his blitz on this. I was shocked.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I guess that's a thing.
Unbelievable. That was a wild game to play.
Yeah, so he goes around. Okay, not the craziest thing he could have done. It didn't involve a bunch of dodge rolls. In fact, I don't think he had a dodge roll. But right here is his dodge roll, and I think at least 1 going for it, if not 2.
Yeah, but this is something that at least he did learn that where it was. I'm trying to get back to it.
It was 1 dodge roll and 1 going for it, it looked like. And he got the touchdown. An interesting game to learn from, at the very least.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a good game because I think that it's a mix of kind of level 1 strategy and level 2 strategy. So you can kind of see where things went well because they were supposed to go well, and then things that went terribly wrong because they were poorly conceived. And I think there was just mayhem everywhere, especially toward the end.
Yeah, I think both of you played within the realm of acceptable. I mean, I've seen much worse Blood Bowl games. I've seen people do a lot worse things. I just think sometimes that you guys and especially in this game, got really caught up in hitting.
Yep.
And you gotta get out of that mentality.
Yep, I agree. And that's, I'd like to say that a lot of it was because I screwed it from the beginning and was on heels, but I mean, I had a perfect opportunity to reset at half and do a much better job than I did.
Yeah.
But he did a very good job of standing toe to toe and making fairly good decisions about what blocks to make and what routes to use, and really it came down to a couple good positions and a couple good rolls, and I mean he pulled it out at the end. I mean, last turn 16.
Yeah, some of his choices were unorthodox and not my choice, but you can't argue with results. A win is a win, so therefore he is fully deserving of that. And I think both of you guys did a good job. There's always room for improvement, and I hope this not only helped you, but if he watches, it helps him, and I hope it helps anybody who's watching right now.
Outstanding. I agree wholeheartedly.
All right, and we're going to come back in 2 days, should be the last game played, and hopefully we'll be able to do the recap that night or the next day. So expect a week recap where we probably won't hit this game as hard as we would have normally, since we have an entire video for it, and over hour-long video. But we'll do our best to just mention this again and talk about the other games. And thanks for watching. If you guys need any more tips or tricks, just post down here if you want anything specific for teams. I'm sure SK and I could oblige if we get enough people who want them.
I'll be more than happy. I love hearing the sound of my voice on YouTube.
It's a wonderful thing. So we're going to catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, especially if you like SK. And we will catch you next time.
Have a good one.